Hi, I'm Tuomas Kuusniemi and welcome to my research log for my master's thesis at the University of Oulu on nexus analysis on role-playing games. I'm recording this on the 6th of October. Should have published like yesterday. A video, I mean, not the thesis. Not the thesis. But yeah, too busy. That's been sort of weighing down on the on my reading and thinking about the thesis thing that I have. I've had several projects running alongside, and those have taken priority because they have earlier deadlines. And now I've managed to get rid of one, concluded it fairly successfully. So hopefully I'll be able to do more reading and more just simply thinking about this thing. On the other hand, when I had a meeting with my advisors, Leena Kuure and Tiina Keisanen, last week, they tried to get through to me that I don't have to so much concentrate on treating the video material we gathered last year as a corpus in the usual sense, or to being objective. That nexus analysis is not about being objective, and I'm having trouble with that. Like not on an idea level. I like the idea. It's just trying to orient myself into the attitude that my expertise and experience as a role player in and of itself is a good topic, and that I can actually examine role-playing games in a more general sense without referring to a particular sort of material, footage, that I can use that as examples instead of using it as the entirety of the stuff I'm examining. So that turned my thoughts back to an idea I had a couple of years ago, and when I examined the sort of omission of information as an important part of the game master player dynamic. My idea was that when you have this spotlight of attention, when we talk about the spotlight of attention, but we often talk about it in a cinematic sense. In sort of like the camera turning toward the player character, and that's the spotlight of attention. For movies that works, but for games, especially role-playing games which afford particularly high degrees of agency to participants, I don't think it does. Because role-playing games do not have a strict set. There is no real limit to where the camera could turn, so to speak. And there's an infinite amount of detail. And in a role-playing game, everyone gets to make calls on where the camera gets turned to next. So when we think of it on a game level, or in a game context, how Spotlight actually works is that we have the people around the table, and that's where it's at. That's where we should sort of start it. This idea of there being a spotlight, of who gets to have narrative authority, who gets to speak. More of a meeting than anything else. But when a when a player or when a participant gets the spotlight of attention on themselves, they get to choose how to use that spotlight. They can either spend it on, like, keep themselves at the fore and as a person and a human being, or they can, with their speech and their communication, reflect that spotlight onto the game world, onto the spots that are interesting to them, and thereby express their own character and nature, and also the what their player character is like, what is interesting to the player character. And I think that that's a very central part of the agency that we have in role-playing games, that the world isn't set. The world is a lot. Even if there is, even if we're in a dungeon that is very heavily scripted, there is, in the description that is written down beforehand, there is a limit to the amount of detail, but there is no limit to the detail that you can get by reflecting this spotlight of attention. Okay, when working, let's see, how should I? Video games, the dungeon, a very popular setting for video games for a very good reason. It's a restricted environment. You can have lots and lots of detail in a video game, and you, as a player, you can dictate where the spotlight turns. You can control the camera. Let's say it's a first-person perspective game. You can wander around, you can focus in, you can maybe click some stuff and get more information or interact with them. But you can't buck the resolution. There are technical limits to the degree of detail you can get. And also the computer can't generate extra content that isn't there. Yet. We'll get there eventually. But you can procedurally generate stuff, but that also has its limits, and it's not entirely responsive to the player and the environment and the situation. Or at least, well, it takes a hell of a lot of work to do that. But yeah, there is a limit to what can be inquired about in a dungeon, in a video game. But when you put that in a role-playing game context, then you can just ask the game master what the water that's seeping between the cracks in the wall smells like. You can do that. Might be considered impolite and sort of unnecessary and so on in some groups, but you can still do that, and probably your request will be considered in good faith, that you're not just trolling by expressing your individuality and expressing what's interesting to your character. So, it's about sort of reflecting the spotlight you get as a human through your player character and through your agency in the game. And I didn't name this back then, but I'm sort of warming up to the term Ludic Inattention. It's related to Goffman's term civil inattention, only in the sense that there is the term inattention. The two don't really have anything to do with each other. Civil inattention is the act of when you approach someone, like, or when someone walks up to you or past you on the street, you briefly glance at them to acknowledge that they exist and that you're not ignoring them, but then you avert your eyes out of politeness, that I'm not paying particular attention to you, I don't have any designs on your fate. So you avert your eyes and you go past each other and it's fine. It's what happens in daily life. It's just how we conduct ourselves socially. That's civil inattention. So I just ludic inattention somehow just tickled my fancy as this sort of the importance of, or rather the act of a game master or other person with narrative authority who's describing the environment, then they're leaving details out for the specific purpose of others having the freedom to ask, and therefore bring to the fore the things that interest them, shine the spotlight on those things in the game world. So as I see it, it sort of forms a chain. That you have the player at the table who gets the spotlight from the other players. They're paying attention to what they're saying. And then that player reflects at least part of that spotlight onto the character and onto the game world. By the things through the things that their character pays attention to. Now, this has some very practical applications. For one thing, many of us have been in the position where the person with narrative authority, let's just say the game master, is over describing a situation or a space. So much that the details just get lost in the mountain of information, vital details even. That you end up with a situation where the game master said that, okay, as you break down the door, break down the oaken iron-bound door, you come to a 30-foot by 40-foot space with rock walls and slated floors with this very intricately designed carpet that is from the Ketite region of the world. You can tell by the colors and the designs. Next to that, in the left-hand far corner, there is a large bed with crimson sheets and fluffy pillows of down. And you can see from the way that the headboard is carved that this is in fact from the county of Ulek, which is famed for its fine woodwork. And then beside that is the orc, and just next to that there is a very ornate table with a fantastic looking antlered deer head, where each tine of the antlers holds a candle, and this lays light on the wonderful tapestry that depicts three of the muses, one of them holding a cornucopia, which you know is the symbol of house blah blah, and so on, and the description goes on, and then people walk into the thing, starting to loot the place, and then the orc attacks, and everyone says, "What orc?" This might have been counterproductive to reproduce this situation. How does YouTubing and this sort of monologue thing differ from being a game master? Well, yeah, well, that's another topic. But anywho, that's the danger in putting in more than, say, 4 to 10 units that need to be memorized. We just can't hold all that information in. So, and that what also happens in that situation is that the game master is dictating what the player characters find interesting. And I'm not really down with that. For one thing, it clutters things up. It prevents the players from asking questions and like being engaging with the environment. If you just get a description, then you're just walking into the space and then moving on. But if you get to ask questions about the details that are interesting to you, then and to your player character, then you're engaging and you're active and you're using your agency, and then everyone's happier because, well, with a more general description that okay, you the door was tough and you burst through. It's a 30 by 40 foot rock wall space, and there's an orc between next to a bed, and there's some other furniture around as well. And the orc is snarling, and what do you do? Then, if they want to know about the fine headboard, they can do so. They might want to take care of the orc first, though. But yeah, there's sort of omission as an important part of gameplay and the use of narrative authority, of in this way giving space to other participants, is what I'd come to term ludic inattention. I'm not sure if I'm going anywhere with the term, if I'm sort of refining it, but the idea of omission as a valuable thing does speak to me, especially because it takes games on as games and not as some bastard extension of cinema. And I hope that it will be useful at some point. But, yeah, that's my ramble for now. I have to turn to writing now, because that's my assignment for next week. That I need to produce some actual written text besides these videos. These are rambles, these are not academic texts, unfortunately. If I could do my master's thesis as a series of YouTube ramblings, that would be grand. I'm way too slow a writer, a bit too perfectionist. But yes, thank you for your attention or inattention, whatever it was that brought you this far through this rather long video. And thanks to my advisors for sort of dragging me into looking at my own experience and expertise, and looking at the actual hobby instead of an sort of a series of social actions or an interaction space. Maybe something good will come of this to role-playing games as a whole. But yeah, thank you very much. Have fun and game on.